In today's world, humans rely on man-made systems for food, shelter, medicine, and material goods. Most of these man-made systems are dependent on oil, a non-renewable resource. Most of these systems are not considered sustainable or able to flourish in the long run. Organic farming is a practice in sustainability because one of its goals is to incorporate natural systems with man-made systems in such a way that both can flourish alongside each other in the long run. To learn more about this, I traveled to Ireland during the summer of 2010, where I stayed with 3 different families, all in different stages of achieving a more sustainable existence.
We arrived here first 7 years ago. Gypsy! Prior to that, I was living for about 15 years before that in the inner city, and I guess that it was really during that time. I guess I was becoming very interested in how to have the best life that you could have with the resources that were available, which were pretty minimal. Brendan Behan wrote something where he said that all his family's land was in window boxes. I remember reading that and kind of relating to it, because that was my situation. So I did have kind of a bit of a fantasy that you could live somewhere and have some land and garden and stuff. It became possible because I had a full-time job, so I could get a mortgage and stuff, but the reality of having a full-time job 100 miles away from where you live means that you actually don't have the time to do all this stuff that you think you might do when you're rich in time and poor in money. It always strikes me as kind of ironic that I think I had a very small kind of carbon footprint when I lived in the city, you know. I cycled and I walked everywhere, and I lived very largely by scavenging, really. I feel the conflict of that. I feel that I'm not very much in harmony with my surroundings, although I would like to be. The point for me about being here is being here, and loving the place, and kind of bringing it back to life. And a lot of the time we have other people around. We have visitors quite a lot, and usually when people visit they do some work. But it's very lovely to be here. And when we arrived here first, the house had been empty for some years and the land was completely overgrown. We do some stuff. We don't grow an awful lot, but we save turf in the bog, which I really enjoy, and it's something that people who lived in places like this always did, so it's kind of a connection with the past. And it's a fuel. Your fuel is very important. In the winter you kind of pull in your horns, and we live more or less in the kitchen. There's a stove in there, we call it the range here. You can cook on it and it heats your water and heats a couple of radiators, and that's very much the heart of the house, and that's where we burn all the turf that we've worked all summer lifting and turning and carrying and putting into a trailer and bringing up to the shed and taking it out again and stacking it again. And I always say that by the time you're burning a piece of turf, each individual piece is an old friend. You've handled it 9 or 10 times by the time you actually get to put it in your fire. This is pretty much mud, and in times gone past people would have dug it out with a thing called a loy, which is basically a type of spade. But what happens these days is if somebody comes along with a big mechanical digger, there's a big hole down at the end there, you'll see, where they scoop it out with the digger, and they put it into a hopper, which is like a big basin, and it gets extruded out in fingers. A bit like sausages. They look a bit like sausages cut up into pieces. We do this is called putting it. You can see it's been dry, so this stuff is pretty dry now. When you come down first, this is mud. If you pick it up it falls apart, but this is a kind of a dry light thing now. and you basically pick them up, and I always say it's like a game of Jenga. Do you ever play Jenga? In such a way as to just let the maximum amount of air through it. Can you see this stuff that hasn't been lifted yet? You can see the underside of it. It's still pretty wet, yeah? As compared to this side. So when we're stacking it now, we're turning it over so that it gets dry all the way through, like it is on that side. It makes a pretty good fire. It makes a surprisingly good fire for something that's basically mud.
We went away. This was before I'd come here and learned to do fires. Our patrol leader was like, okay, one last match. And literally 3 boxes of matches later, this is the last. She went through 4 boxes of matches. And do you know what she did in the end? She got some guy to come up with a lighter and just light a copy and then start piling sticks on around the copy. He just lit the copy.
It's really sad because everyone used to know how to light a fire. These are 2 tires high. If I was a more industrious person, they could be maybe 6 tires high and have a lot more potatoes in them. I don't know if we're going to get much potatoes or not. But it's very good because it conserves the water. You don't have to do much watering, or you don't have to do much of anything with them. Protects them from frost and stuff as well. So now it's time to see if we've got some potatoes. We've probably got some potatoes. I did take 1 out already. And some people reckon you should just knock the stack down and fish around in it. But I kind of like to just put my arm in like a lucky dip and see what I get. So if something comes into my hands, I'm taking it. There's none of it.